Okay, everybody, welcome to the Supercoach Doctor Trading Centre for round 15, the place where you can pick up all your Supercoach bargains and get all your Supercoach tips for who you should be bringing into your side for this week. So hopefully we can find a few little bits of gold in there for you. Righto. Kick it off with the backs. Now I'm going to start with Shannon Hurn. We've spoken about him a fair bit this year just because he's so consistent. He's at 471,000k, so he's not really in that upper echelon of the defenders, but just sort of if you've got most of the big guys, he's sort of one to come in just under those. Look at his last five average is 100. He's really consistent, and that's what you really want this time of year. So look, Shannon Hurn, if you're looking for another really good quality player, look, he's not quite as expensive as the bigger scoring guys, but he's still going to give you good value. Speaking of value, Andrew Carazzo from Carlton, he's had 2 games back from his injury now, and he's at 442k, so he's still a little bit cheap. But look, since he's come back from his injury, he's averaged 115 just from the 2 games. But look, more importantly, his dual position status is really important this time of year. And he's also filling the void that Mark Murphy's left as well a little bit, so he's getting plenty of time in the midfield. His last 2 scores have reflected that, so I reckon as prices for him isn't probably going to go too much lower, so I think he's a ripper to be getting on board right now, and that dual position really helpful. Now, Pierce Hanley from the Brisbane Lions, he's had a really great 2 weeks. As good a 2 weeks as anyone in the competition, a 151 and a 124, so he's still only at 448k. We have spoken about him a little bit this year, and if you're looking for someone that's just sort of flown under the radar a bit, might be a little bit unique for your side. And also his form has coincidentally come in when the Lions have started playing really well, and it looks like the Lions are going to keep going alright this year, so I think Pierce Hanley could be a good one for your backline. Now this is a real bargain in the backline here. Sam Fisher at 412,000. Look, over the past few years he's been a really good, solid defender for a lot of Supercoach teams. Look, he's had his injury worries on the weekend on this season. He hasn't really been able to get a lot of continuity into his football, but he's just starting to get that now. He had an 81 on the weekend, which, it's not setting the world on fire, but it's not a bad score. In a game where the Saints, they lost. So 412k, I think is a real bargain. And at this stage of the year, sometimes you haven't got over 500 to spend on a defender, and if you're looking for a little bit of value, I reckon you can't go too far wrong with Sam Fisher. Now, into the mids, and there's always plenty of midfielders around, but the first 2 there, Brent Stanton and Josh Kennedy, they are the two big guns earlier in the year, racking up some huge scores. Look, they've just come back to the pack a little bit as the season has gone on. That's fair enough. They've probably found their level, but now they're starting to represent a little bit of value. Brent Stanton hasn't had the greatest of months, but he bounced back with a 107 on the weekend. At 500k, I reckon he's a pretty good bargain. And look, with Jobe Watson playing so well at the moment, maybe a little bit more attention might go to Watson now, not so much to Stanton, and he might just start to really start to hit his straps again. But at 500k, I reckon he's a real bargain, as is Josh Kennedy. His last 5, he's averaged 105, so he's had a little bit of consistency. So I reckon Josh Kennedy, and also, just like Stanton, Kieran Jack, Lewis Jetta, even Goodsey coming back, just maybe starting to take a bit of focus off Kennedy, so he can just escape a bit of the attention he's been getting. But look, that last 5 average is pretty good, and I think at 526 he's a bit of a bargain. Now, if we're looking for consistency, you haven't quite got that 500k plus to spend, as sometimes you haven't at this time of year. Jimmy Bartel, his last 5 has been 101 average, and at 495k, I reckon he's a real bargain. If you have a look at his scores throughout the year, he just doesn't have too many ups and downs, but it doesn't go huge, but that's okay. He's really consistent around that 100 mark. As is Lenny Hayes at 485, just a little bit cheaper. Lenny's probably got that ability to go a little bit higher than Jimmy. He can rack up that big score like he did on the weekend of around 140. Look, Lenny Hayes has been a bargain all year, and he's come down a little bit in price, and at 485, I think he's good value. Now, Michael Barlow at 467, the cheapest of our recommendations here. Look, his last 6 games have been all 90 plus games, and I think he had 130 odd on the weekend for about 38 or so touches. Now, look, Michael Barlow, we all know about his injury. It was a horrific injury. And look, sometimes with a really bad injury like that, sometimes it does take half a season just to get back in the swing of things. You talk to a lot of guys that have had knee reconstructions. They'll tell you that it takes half a season, sometimes even a season, before they can get back into the swing of things. So Michael Barlow, with the half season gone, if you look at his scores, he's been steadily improving. So that price of 467, if you haven't got a heap of coin, Michael Barlow could be a really good value, and we know that he can go big. He did that when he when he debuted last year, so he might just be looking for a few big scores. So have a look at him. Now on to the buy of the week, and we're going on about it again. Chris Judd, he's gone down in price even more. Now the big question mark, was going into the weekend. Is he over the little niggles that he's had over the last month or so, which has been reflected in his scores? And I think that was resounding. Yes, he has got over his injuries. Anyone who watched the game could just see he had that zip back. He kicked a really good goal. He was breaking the lines. He was winning the contested footy at the stoppages. And 126 points reflects that. And at 466,500, a bloke like that's not going to get any cheaper. As you can see, his break even there's 113. So he's probably not going to go down too much more in value. But look, this just shows you how much of a bargain he is. He's $2,000 more than David Allard. Now, no disrespect to David Allard, who's averaging about 90 this year. Him and Juddy are the same price. Now, I know you're going to take Juddy every day of the week, but it just shows you how much of a bargain he is. So if you've got a little spot there in your midfield, get Juddy. He's not going to let you down for the rest of the year, I reckon. Now, onto the rucks, not a heap of rucks around, but I reckon Paddy Ryder's really good value. There's a couple of rucks up at that high 500, like, your Mariches and your Coxes who are doing really well. But look at Paddy Ryder. Basically, his last 5 games have been over 100. He had one game where he had a 99. So he's just got some really good consistency of breaking that 100. 519, I reckon that's real good value. As is Darren Jolly. His last 3 he's averaged 126. 474k. Got a good bit of value there. If you're looking to maybe replace a Jonathan Giles, who's just may have plateaued a little bit, Jolly could be a little bit of value. And it looks to me Jolly's just doing a lot of ruck work, and I reckon the week's breaks really been good for him. If you look since then, he's played really well. So if you're looking at those guys, it's just some really good value in your ruck if you really need it, especially if you're replacing someone like Giles. Now, onto the forwards. Now, I spoke about Danny Stanley earlier in the year after he played a couple of games before his price started going up. And he's averaging 95 this year. He's one of only 2 Gold Coast players to break the ton on the weekend. And at 446k, he's representing a bit of value, and he could be a good unique pick if you're just looking for someone to fill that last spot in your backline. So have a real good look at Danny Stanley. He's a good, tough inside player. He wins a lot of his own footy, and that's really good. Really good, how do you put it, aspect of your game to have for Supercoach if you can win your own footy, just like those midfielders we were talking about before. And now look, Dustin Martin, 433k. I think now's the time to pounce. We know a lot of people jumped on him at the start of the year, and fair enough, he probably hasn't set the world on fire, but at 433k. Now look at his last 5 average, 97, so you can just see he's getting a bit of consistency. Went big on the weekend with a 134, I think it was 130 or something, and he's got that dual position status, which makes him a little bit more valuable. And at 433, I reckon he is the bargain of all the forward line players this week. Dustin Martin, get on him if you can. Now Jack Watts, we spoke about him last week in our video, and he duly saluted with a beautiful 99 up there in Brisbane. Melbourne had a shocking game, but Jack Watts shone up there, and a 99 was really good. And look at his last 5, averaging 96. He's still at 468k, so I think he's really good value. And to be honest, just keep an eye on him for next year as well. I think Jack Watts is going to be really good value, and he's a good unique player to have. Not a lot of people have got him, I reckon. Now, down to Lethal Lee Adams from North Melbourne. Look at his last 2 there, 151 and 135. They're exceptional scores. Coincidentally, when North Melbourne have played well, been able to rack up some good scores. And look, North seem to have hit their straps now. So I think Lethal Lee Adams at 469, and he's got that dual position status as well. I think he's really good value at the moment, and he wins his own footy as well. He likes to get win that contested possession, getting close, and he's probably not the sort of guy that's going to get tagged. So I think he can probably provide a little bit of consistency for you in your forward line in the back half of the season. Righto, so that's it for the forwards. Now we're just going to go on to a few things just to be keeping in the back of your mind and be thinking about at this stage of the year. Now, trades. I know everyone's burning a lot of them, and you're probably starting to realise how quickly they can go. Now, if you can, you've got to keep some for finals. At an absolute minimum, you want to have 2. The more the better. 4 is probably the ideal figure, I reckon, to have. Obviously, it depends on where you are on your ladder. Obviously, if you're down, not in the top 4, you might only have 1 week of finals, so you might only want to keep 2, and you might need to use some trade to get into the finals. But if you're looking at a top 4 berth, you want to be keeping at least 4 for your finals, because anything can happen, and you do not want a donut in the finals. Now, what's going to help that as well is my next point: having good backup on your bench. We've seen, there's been suspensions this week, injuries, little 1-2 week injuries and suspensions. Really good just to be able to bring in a player straight off your bench, so you don't get too stressed if you have got someone out for a week, like Buddy Franklin might be out this week. So it's really good just to have that backup there sitting on your bench. And look, if you have got a few trades up your sleeve, don't be afraid to trade for backup. A lot of the rookies and the younger players at the moment just starting to feel the pinch in that second half of the year. They might start to be rested, or their form drops and they get dropped from the side. So it's good to have someone on your bench who you know is going to play week in, week out, and they can give you a score. It may not be a huge one, but it's going to avoid that donut for you. A couple of classic examples. Ben Rutten for Adelaide, I think he's around 250, 280, something like that. He had 80 points on the week, and he's only averaging about 50 or 60, but he's playing week in, week out. So he's just going to give you that backup. And Kieran Harper in the forward line as well. Not getting huge points, but he's playing every week, and he's there if you need him. So just keep that in the back of your mind if you've got a few trades up your sleeve. Now, speaking of trading, don't trade sideways. I'm seeing people start to think about it when players are dropping in form, especially with premiums. Now's not the time of the year to be wasting your trades, as you've been seeing throughout the year. They're just gold right now, and you don't want to waste them. You've got to look at ways to improve your side, and you might go, oh yeah, well, this guy's been playing crap, so I'll get rid of him and bring in someone who's going to play better on a sideways trade. There's no guarantee that's going to happen. Classic example this week, my old man did a sideways trade. Stupid as he is, he got rid of Paul Pleasure, bought in Whitecross. What happens? Whitecross gets about 60 points. Paul Pleasure goes and has an absolute cracker, and that's the exact reason why you don't sideways trade. You just can't predict how players are going to go when you're doing a sideways trade. Now, my last point is just something to keep in mind. I don't reckon players are going to get rested like they were last year in the last part of the year. If you look at that ladder for the top 8, it looks red hot. Percentage counts. Every game is going to count this year for the top 8, whether you're trying to make the top 8 or you're trying to make the top 4 or top 2 or get home finals, and even percentage, as I said. So look, that's going to be a real bonus for Supercoach players this year, is I don't think players are going to be rested, so that's going to be really good coming in the back half of the year, but still make sure you got your cover. Righto, that just about wraps up the Trading Centre. Apologies for getting on a little bit late. I had some technical issues with this bloody computer and uploading and all that sort of crap that goes on when you're doing this sort of gear. But anyway, obviously if you're watching this, I've got over those, so that's great. Make sure you're getting on board the Facebook page. There's been plenty of discussion there the last couple of days about trading. It's good to see other people getting involved. People like to ask me the questions, and I'm happy to give my recommendations and answers. But if anyone else wants to jump on board and say what they think, that's great. The more opinions, the merrier. I guess it comes back to the individual player on what decision they're going to make. So the more people that get involved, the better. And it's great. We're all helping each other out. That's what we're there for. Anyway, get involved, everyone, and I hope this has been a help to you. See you next time.